Okay, well, welcome everyone. Um, it's great to see you all here tonight. We are, this is actually the first year that we decided to break up the pre-departure orientations. So we are doing two required different sessions. So students will come to this part one, where we'll talk a lot about a lot of things that we want you to know ahead of time before the summer starts. And then we will also have another required part two session later on at the end of April, and one also during short term in May. And we'll always have a Zoom session as well. So for those of you who have not met, my name's Jen Hyde. I am the assistant director for the Center for Global Ed and work with any student who's interested in studying off campus. And I'll also have Darren introduce himself. He's taken.
Hi, I'm Darren Gallant. I'm the Associate Dean Director for Center for Global Education, and I just missed some people coming in. Um, yeah, and so I did advising for some specialty programs and for some of you generally. I also run the short-term courses.
And feel free if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. And also, we'll stick around after if anyone has any questions. And as always, we're on Bates Reach, so you can schedule an appointment with us one-on-one. All right, so let's get started and talk a little bit about our agenda. So as I mentioned, the idea of this workshop is to really make sure students are aware of next steps. You've completed your registration. We've approved you to study abroad either this upcoming fall or for the full academic year. And so now we want to make sure you have an idea of what to do next. So it's time to apply to your program. So we want to make sure you're doing that. We're going to talk a little bit about academics abroad and the differences and what to expect, and make sure that students are aware that it is going to be academically different from Bates. We want to make sure that students are considering their personal identities when they're away and how those identities will be impacted in the various cultural contexts. We'll talk a little bit about your Global Bobcat portal, the next steps there, some overview of finances, deposits, billing, kind of next steps when it comes to that. Like in our second workshop, we'll talk a little bit more about budgeting, and then there will also be specific financial aid workshops. I'll move my here. I will talk about visas, all that you need to know about, or excuse me, all you need to know what to do to start researching for your visas, and then a little bit more about academic planning and some next steps. So hopefully by now you have decided on what program you would like to go on. I know some students are still torn between where they might want to go, but really now's the time that you want to solidify your decision and apply to your program. So I want to make sure that students are aware that it is different than the Bates registration. The Bates registration is its own process. It's really giving us knowledge that you want to study abroad next year or next fall, next academic year, that you have the approval from the department chair of your major, and that you're registering your intent to study abroad with Bates. Otherwise, you actually have to apply to your program and get accepted. I would say the only exception to this rule are students who are going to the DIS program in Copenhagen or in Stockholm. Those programs are the Bates registration. So you register with us and then we nominate you, but any other program, you actually have to apply to the program. So you want to familiarize yourself with the application process. Go to your program website and look through how to apply on their website. Most applications are pretty straightforward. They'll include maybe a personal statement, why you want to go in this program, your transcript, maybe a copy of your passport. Sometimes there's a letter of support or recommendation from a professor or a form that I need to sign, giving you approval to go in this program. But if you meet those requirements, you meet the GPA requirement, you apply in advance before the deadline, you're in. We don't usually recommend students to apply to multiple programs and say, fingers crossed, I get in. It's pretty straightforward. There are some programs that are a bit more competitive. If you're not sure if you should have a backup program, email Darren or I. We can always meet and talk a little bit more about your specific program if you meet the requirements and if a backup program would be option. But over 90% of the programs, it's not necessary. We want to make sure that you're applying to your program, we say by March 1st, which is this Saturday. There are some programs where applications aren't open then, and we understand it might be too early to apply. And there are some programs that actually the application deadline is already passed. So all deadlines vary. We want to make sure you're familiar with your program's application process, what the deadline is, and apply in advance before the deadline. Some may not have deadlines until April, May, June. Do not wait that long. Sometimes programs can fill up, they can close their application early. It's just better, safe and sorry, apply in advance before the deadline. I think I've covered all of that. So if you have questions about your application, let us know. Again, we can always meet and chat. So as you are considering your program options, or maybe you've solidified your choice, you want to start thinking about what personal identities come to mind when you're preparing for this experience and how those identities will be perceived when you're away in a new cultural context. So thinking back to maybe your time when you studied here at Bates, and you arrived your first year, there might be certain identities that really came to the forefront. Maybe it was your ethnicity or your race, or your gender, your sexual orientation. Maybe there are identities that you've started to explore a little bit more while you're at Bates. It's also important to think about how will these personal identities be perceived when I'm away? Are these identities that I want to explore more while I'm away? We do not want you to get on the plane, arrive in your new host country or city in the US or outside of the US and think, oh, wow, I didn't think about what it would be like to be a queer student studying in Budapest, Hungary, which can be a pretty homophobic government. What will that experience look like? We want you to think about this ahead of time. Think about it now and lean on us, Darren and myself. We have global ambassadors in our office who can work with students to kind of think about these things beforehand, and also your programs. Your programs will have some really great resources to help you prepare before you arrive as well. As I mentioned, before you go, you want to think about this. As I mentioned as well, you want to explore these identities when you're away. One even example of maybe you're becoming a non-native speaker for the first time. That can be something that you want to hone in on. There are a number of useful resources on our website in your Global Bobcats portal, as well as on our website linked here. And a lot of your programs, as I mentioned, will have resources available. And we can always find resources. If they're not readily available, let us know and we can help explore and find those for you. And the last tip here is to really explore local identity-based initiatives and try to get involved. So some students, once they arrive on site, they'll, hone in on one of their identities, find a local group that they can with, and really create some kind of local connections by leaning into their identities. So that's also something to consider before you go, but also when you arrive, doing a little bit of research on site. Something else to keep in mind is you're going on different programs, and a lot of them have different program sizes and different opportunities to create new and different relationships. So some of you might be going on some smaller programs. We have some programs that can be as small as 5 to 10 students, up to 20 to 25 students. Those can be those smaller experiential learning programs like SIT or School for Field Studies, just two examples. And you want to think about what will this experience be like for me in this small environment? How do I jive in that sort of small group environment? Is it something that I'm interested in? If it's not something that I'm looking for, some students are like, I want to be outside of Bates, outside of Lewiston, in a big city, meeting lots of people. We want to think about, okay, what does that environment look like? Is it a good fit for you? And what will that experience be like? Because sometimes in the small groups, there's a bad egg in the group, it can be a challenge. And so we want to make sure you're thinking about that ahead of time. We've also heard from students that they are really leaning into different dating and friending apps to meet locals, which is a really interesting way to connect with locals. We're not saying don't do it, but we want to make sure you're thinking about your safety ahead of time. And so keep in mind that these friending apps can be a really great way to meet locals. We just want to make sure that you are doing it in a public setting and going about it in a safe way. We want to make sure you're thinking about what is the going out culture where you're going. Have you chosen this program because of the going out culture? And if so, do all other aspects of this program and experience interest you? We don't want students to choose one program because solely because of academics and they're not thinking about the social settings. Or we don't want students to choose a program only because of the social setting and not thinking about the academics or other reasons why they might choose this program. So we really want to think holistically, what will this program, this location mean and look like for me? Some students will stray away from doing a homestay, but we really encourage students to consider this an option. I would say 9 out of 10 times when students come back and they're doing their program evaluations, they say homestay was the best experience and their biggest highlight and takeaway from their time away. So if your program offers homestay, really encourage you to think about it as a great housing option. It's not like you're living with your parents and they have a tight control and a bedtime for you and they are monitoring your every move. They understand that you're there to explore. I remember having a student coming back somewhat recently saying, my host mother like really wanted me to go out dancing one night and all I want to do was like go home and go to bed, but they wanted me to go out and explore. And so I tell students they're there to help and encourage you to experience outside of the four walls of their home and get out and explore and meet and connect with locals as well. So consider it. Um, we'll talk a little bit more next session too about kind of disconnecting while you're away and taking a break from Bates and friends back at home. But it is important to think about how can I maintain those friendships while also being really present and connected with where I am. And you're also going to have opportunities to make new network of faculty and staff interactions. So I was recently speaking with a student who returned and they're hoping to go back this summer to do research with a faculty member from their program. So they created that relationship, they networked, and they are continuing to nourish that relationship with a faculty member. So keep in mind that this is an opportunity for you to build those networks. And you want to think about how those faculty and staff interactions can really be different than your time here at Bates, but really an opportunity for you to create those new networks as well. I think this is you, Darren.
It is, yeah. So academics. So obviously it's study abroad, so you're going to be doing some academic coursework. So one of the main points here is, expect academic differences, and that's for a lot of you, I know that's why you're looking to study off campus. But what that means is that you're also going to have to adjust to this new style of learning. So you may find that grading, finals, style of learning may be very different from Bates, but also be somewhat similar. We find students report usually experiencing, well, not more final exams, but the final exams are more of an impact on their assessment and grading and course, and that there is a lot less continual assessment. It's very unlikely, especially at larger universities, that it's unlikely that you'd see participation grades at all. So you might be showing up for every lecture, which you should, but it might not count towards your grade at all. So they're just you have the time now to get to know what the differences will be like, and you can, do your research, talk to people who have been there, go on YouTube, look at the school, look at the classes. It should be outlined. You should be able to find it. So you want to make sure you're aware of that as you're applying, but then as you're committing to your program as well. One thing you might see that would be different would be how academic accommodations are managed. Be a wide variety. Some will be just like Bates, but many will be a whole different system. You might need different documentation. You might just need a letter from Bates. The accommodations that are offered might be 15 minutes extra time or whatever you want. So it's going to be a wide range, and it's up to that individual institution how, what are the cultural norms? What are the legal requirements of the institution? Sometimes it's really school by school. And the main takeaway here is, as you get accepted into your program, and I usually say, to have this conversation after you've been accepted, start to bring this up as, okay, so how do I access accommodations if I need them? And even if you don't usually need them, it's a good idea to register for accommodations so that you have it on the books. Because there are certain schools, a lot of the direct enroll universities, they really don't allow students to apply for academic accommodations partway through the semester. Or if they do, it is not retroactive. And so it's only going forward. So something to look out for early on. We know that many of you are far away from choosing courses, but some of you are also already choosing courses. So it's that time where like it's a little bit of a mix. Some of you have to choose courses when you apply, some not until you arrive on site. So a reminder for all of you, and you'll get reminders about this later too, like the courses you choose should be within the margins of liberal arts and sciences. Think, would Bates teach this? That's a pretty good uh, measure. You can take a course on the what do we call it, on the margins. So like maybe a business course, I say like one, or a pre-vet course or something that's just not what Bates normally teaches. Feel free to run those by us, especially if you want to take more than one, because that's when it can get a little dicey. Must stay for the regular term. You need to take your final exams. We don't allow students to um, adjust the semester. The semesters have been already reviewed and approved, and that's how you earn credit. Is that a question or just an unmute? You can ask questions. Reminder, you need to take a local language course if it's a non-English majority location. For example, so Danish in Denmark, Italian in Italy. Jen, can you do the waiting room in the list? And actually change the slide too. Sorry, I can't multitask. Great. Okay, so those are general overview of selecting courses, and now we're going to talk about the credit load. So you'll see that sometimes even as I speak, I'll mix these up a little bit, but I'm going to talk about course load and credit load, and they're different things. The first point here is that in your Global Bobcats account and on our website, there's a whole page and section about like what you need to do to receive credit for the semester or a year. I'm going to hit the highlights here. So to receive credit, you need to take a full course load. And in that link, we outline what a full course load is for each program. It brings you to a Google Sheet. Well, you go to this page, and then you go to another page that goes to a Google Sheet. And then the programs are organized by, let's say, continent or region, and then by country. And it says you take this number of courses or this number of credits. You need to earn this grade or 3.0 GPA. And that's how you get a full semester of credit. Full semester of credit is 4 credits, 4 Bates credits. All right. So let's see. You must take your courses for letter grade. While the grades don't show on your Bates transcript and don't impact your Bates GPA, we need to see the letter grade in order to give you the credit. You also need to earn a 3.0 GPA cumulatively. And we also need to receive your transcript. I have students, some seniors that we're working with that we still haven't gotten their transcripts to us, and it's getting close. So we just got to get at some point. Let's see. In terms of course load and credit load, so you can't take online courses. You're there to study in the location, and no extra credit. So you can't earn more than 4 Bates credits per semester. I talked about the program course load in that online Google Sheet. And generally, what you're looking for is the equivalent of 15 or 16 US credits. 4 Bates courses that are 1 credit each equals 16 US credits. Okay. Bates is on a unique system where one course is 1 credit. And so that's what you're looking for. The number of courses will vary by institution because, academic differences. So if you're at the Edinburgh, you're probably going to take 3 courses. But if you're at University College Dublin, you might take 5 or 6. So it really depends. And if you get lost at this as you're going down the road, you just email Jen or myself and we'll help you figure it out. And in Europe in particular, there's different credit systems. So there's ECTS, and in Scotland, there's SCQF. And so you would be looking for 30 ECTS or 60 SCQF. And that would get you to the credit you need because it equals 15 US credits. All right, next slide, Jen. So that was all about general credit, the credit you need to graduate. If you want the courses to count towards your major, minor, or a GAC, that's up to your program or department chair. Jen and I aren't involved in that process, though we'll always advise you on what the steps are for you at any given point. Before you go, I recommend that you get courses pre-approved towards the major, minor, or GAC if you can. Each department and program handles this differently. So some will say, just go and come back and we'll figure it out later. Others Be like, no, 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 show me the syllabus now. Let's figure this out and make sure you can get that course count. Um, Save any approval in email or in writing. The planning document you did for your registration is just that. It's a planning document. The academic approval form is to like ensure you're going to graduate. I'm talking about more specifically about getting those major requirements done. Officially, when you return from studying off campus, that's when there's like an online form that your department chair signs and goes to the registrar's office. So that officially happens on your return. But some departments allow you to fill that out in advance. It will not show up until after your credit has been transferred, though. So don't expect to see it like checked off in your degree audit and you haven't even gone abroad yet. It will not show up until we've gotten your transcript. I think that's it for that slide, Jen. All right. So switching from academics to billing. So billing for off-campus study is different than any other semester, and I think that's what confuses students at times and families, whoever's paying the bills. We do have a couple web pages on how this all works, so feel free to share that with whoever's paying the bills, whether that's you or someone else. Essentially, um, for those for those not on financial aid, you will get a bill from the program or school directly, and then it's your responsibility to pay that. You will then also, probably prior to that, have received an off-campus study fee bill, which will be somewhere around over $3,000. This is the fee for this current year. That keeps you enrolled, gives you access to all Bates supports, administration resources. And if you are on financial aid, when you get that bill, you will send it to Heidi Bassam, and you will learn a lot more about that process when you attend the financial aid workshop, the first one being March 4th. And next slide, Jen. Yep. And so I won't go into too much detail about the financial aid, like it's March 5th, the financial aid process, because we're gonna have a whole workshop on it, and you're required to attend if you receive financial aid. But essentially, we estimate your cost of attendance for the semester and includes these things here: the off-campus study fee, tuition, housing, meals, personal expenses, books, airfare, and any visa fees. Does not include some things like travel or visa appointments and immunizations. We send that to Student Financial Services. They review and consider it as your cost for the semester and send you an award letter. You want to make sure you look over that award letter when you receive it, likely in June, and be in touch with your financial aid advisor if you have questions. And then again, if you're receiving financial aid, you send your bill to Heidi Basson, and she'll either help you pay the bill, she'll either release the funds for you to pay the bill or pay it directly if she can. And then you may have additional funds available and you can request those through Garnet Gateway. For those financial aid, there may be upfront or pre-departure costs, we call them. Those could include the deposit, airfare, or visas. We have ways to work with those because you won't have your financial aid money when they're due. So deposits, some of them are due. We've already been accepted, within 2 weeks. There are ways to waive those deposits to later. And sometimes you just need to ask the program for that, or we can also ask and help you fill out the forms that go along with it. If necessary, financial services can advance, can allow you to have an advance on your financial aid to pay that as well. And that's also true for airfare and visa fees. If you are receiving financial aid at a certain level, we can ask financial aid if they can advance your aid on that. It does mean that you are taking from your future aid. So if you don't end up going, it still takes from your future aid. But these are costs that generally are your responsibility, but we can help you navigate them if they are a burden that you can't financially handle. And yeah. And then there's a lot of finances involved with study abroad. I mean, you're doing your own budgeting, which we'll talk about in the next session. There's a lot of costs that can come up and some, sort of financial risks. So you want to make sure that you're understanding the financial policies of Bates, but also your program. And your program's financial policies are going to be very different from Bates. And honestly, we don't know them all. So when you get them, you want to pay attention to them and read them. One of those could be about the withdrawal cost. So if you confirm for a program and then withdraw at some point, you may lose nothing, maybe a deposit, maybe some deposit in a fee, There's one program that we work with that we know that I think if you withdraw within like 60 days of the start of the program, they're going to still charge you a quarter of the tuition costs, which is a fair amount of money to pay for a program you've never been on, right? Let's see. So that's something to be aware of. If you need a financial aid award letter, which you might for a visa application or just generally for like scholarship applications, which you should apply for, that's what we should be talking about, Jen. Forgot about that. Request that from Student Financial Services 5 days in advance. And a reminder that your financial aid is for educational and living costs only. It's not to be sent home, not to be like spent on like a really nice wardrobe in Milan. It's for your everyday living costs. So we don't have a slide on this because we forgot, because we've done this session a little differently. Scholarships. So you may be eligible for scholarships. There's some on our website. We've got a cheat sheet. Some of the deadlines come up pretty quickly or have passed, and Jen sends them out over email as they're relevant. But also, if you're going on a program that has those acronyms like IES or CIE or SIT or DIS, they all have scholarships, and they're usually looking to give away money. So make sure you apply for them. You might be like, oh, I get my financial aid, it's fine. No, no, no. Apply for them, get the money. It might only be $500, but it could be a lot more. And some of them will actually have like sort of work jobs you can do as well. So every little bit helps, right? So make sure you look out for those. What's next, Jen? Oh yeah, so preparing for travel. So if you haven't done a lot of international travel or you want to talk it over with someone, come meet with us or meet with a global ambassador. Global ambassadors have drop-in hours every week. You can find them on our Google Calendar. Um, Also, they're going to be hosting an event later in the semester that's like tips and tricks for traveling. So, and the global ambassadors, 3 out of 4 have already studied abroad. All right, so as you get ready for after you've applied your program, been accepted, you start to like get into sort of a phase of a lot of paperwork. And you need some things in hand in order to start doing that paperwork. One is your passport. So you need to know where it is, what's the expiration date, make sure that it's good for 6 months beyond your return date to your home country. Okay. Sometimes it can be hard to get on a plane if it doesn't have that. They won't let you on a plane rather if it doesn't have that amount of time. So make sure you check that, figure out where it is. I know sometimes it's at home. And then also make copies of the ID page. So you have them, send them to someone you trust, family member, and keep a digital copy for yourself. Maybe bring hard copies with you eventually. And this can be helpful for if you do lose your passport while you're away. If you need to get a new one, having a copy of the ID page can help that process go faster. And the next thing you might need might be a visa. Not all of you are going to need a visa. Some of you will get some like what's it called? The resident permit kind of thing once you get on site. But many of you will need some sort of visa in order to study in your location for over 90 days. We aren't the visa experts for you. That will come from your program or school, but we are here to help translate the abundance of vague information that you will get. So we can always help with that. Make sure you follow the instructions given by your program. For, for most of them, you will need materials from your program in order to even apply. So don't try and get ahead of this. Like you need an acceptance letter. Sometimes you need specific numbers. You can't really jump the gun on this. Some visa applications will require in-person appointments or mailing in your passport. That means you will be without your passport for a period of time, potentially over the summer. So we raise this now as you think about what are you doing this summer? Will you be traveling internationally? That might not be a great idea. So you need to it might be too soon to cancel those plans, but it also might be a point where you say, hold up, I need to figure out if I'm going to need to be in my home country or without my passport for a period of time. You can look into your visa process now. You just search the consulate of the country you're going to, look for student visa. That will really give you a sense of what they're going to be looking for. If you are studying in 2 different locations, and we haven't already talked about the visa process for your two programs, come and talk with one of us. Sometimes it's totally fine, but other times if you're going from, let's say, anywhere to Italy, that's a challenge. Yeah. And we'll just let's see what we can probably list the challenging countries now. Italy, Czech Republic, South Africa. What else comes up, Jen?
Yeah. Portugal,
Portugal, yeah.
um, even France.
Yeah,
A
sometimes
lot of the
France.
European countries can, yeah, Brazil. Um,
Hmm.
and some are as easy as, yeah, applying online. So they vary. So when in doubt, ask.
Yeah. But yeah, those ones we've worked with before, and I'll highlight Italy in particular. They've changed how they're doing things as of January. So they will also be fingerprinting applicants as they come in for visa appointments. I expect that it will be difficult to get appointments. Sorry, you'll be able to get an appointment. It'll be difficult to get a timely appointment. And they're no longer doing batch processing, at least not at this point. And batch processing is when they like a program will send in a group of passports together and they'll do them all at once. So more to come on that, but if you're going to Italy, we're probably going to talk a lot. Let's see. If you need an enrollment letter for your visa application, we can provide you one. Give us a day or two so that we can get it to you. And then if you need a financial aid award letter from financial services, make sure you ask ahead of time, about 5 days ahead of time. Anything else on visas, Jen?
Not that I can think of. I think it's, yeah, important to just look into it now. Don't apply right now, but look into it. All right, so shifting gears a little bit to things to think about at Bates. So we are probably by March 20th, the latest, we will be sending a list of the students going abroad this upcoming fall and the full academic year to both the registrar and housing and financial services, actually, all three people or departments. So that means that in the registrar's office, they will go ahead and code you as studying off campus, which would mean that you would not be able to register for classes here this fall. And I know, I can't believe it, but I know you're in advising period right now, and course registration is coming up for next fall. So you will not be able to register for courses here in the fall. If you do decide to register now, after March 20th, the registrar will be dropping you because they'll have a list from us saying that you're studying off campus. There may be some of you who are really hesitant. They're not sure if they're going to go abroad yet. Let us know. We can talk and see if there can be an exception for you to register for courses, but for the most part, it's really not the case. That students really do need to be coded as studying abroad and not register for courses. And similarly, is the list of students who are sent to housing, that students can't also register for housing here. So can't take up a room here on campus and be coded as studying abroad. So please note, on March 20th, we'll send your name over. If you decide you want to withdraw before then, please let us know. If you decide you want to withdraw afterwards, so let's say this upcoming summer comes around, things have shifted for you, you're like, you know what, I'm not going to be able to go abroad this fall, please let us know. We are the ones that need to know first, so we can let the registrar, housing, and financial services know, so they can bill you accordingly and make sure to get you in courses here. The registrar will work with you to get you into classes. Might not be your top first choice of courses, but they certainly will work with you to get into courses before the end of ad drop period. And similarly with housing, there's a summer housing placement process that they'll work with you to get you into housing. Certainly, we hope you all continue with your plans to study off campus, but we know things happen, plans change. So please know, let us know, and we can work with you to get you back and situated at Bates. So now we want to remind students that they have things to do in their Global Bobcats account. So you've registered with us, you've looked at programs on our portal. You want to make sure that you continue to use the portal. So each phase throughout this time, you're going to have new steps. So right now we have approved your registration. So now if you haven't logged in since you've completed your registration, log in, you're going to see that there are more steps for you to complete now, more resources to review, information about scholarships, identity pieces that we've discussed, how to, make sure you're in a full course load, other credit requirements, things like that. You also want to make sure that in your portal is the right program. I just emailed with a student today who changed their program from going to somewhere in Latin America to Spain. So I went in, changed their program name. It's as simple as that. Emailing Darren or I, letting us know I've changed my program, and we can go ahead and change it in our system. Of course, again, you do need to apply to your program and get accepted. That's a different process, as I mentioned. But we've had some students register with us in one program and then change their mind and not let us know. So please make sure you let us know if you are changing your program so we can update our portal. As I mentioned, more materials to do in your portal. One of those steps is asking for outreach contact information. What we're asking for is if there is a parent, a guardian, a support network, a close family friend who you want to be in the loop, who you would want to get one, maybe two emails from Darren or I saying, hey, you have a student who's studying off campus. We won't give personal information about you, where you're going, but it's more general. Here's how billing works when they're away. Here's our contact information. Here's other resources for you as you prepare your student to go away. So please put their information in there. We will be sending out an email sometime this semester, Darren. Yeah, sometime this
Yeah,
semester.
usually mid to late March. Probably late
Perfect.
March. Yeah.
Coming up then.
Mm.
So we want to make sure we have someone in there. So please answer that question and then any of the other materials in there as well. And once you do those steps, you'll stop getting reminder emails. So you can go ahead, check off that you read those items, and then we'll stop, not us, but it's an automated email from the portal letting you know that you have steps to complete. And one of those steps is going to say coming to this pre-departure orientation. And the second one, you can always just check it off. You can go back, you can read these items again later, but if you check it off, you read it, it just will stop those automated emails to you. And as I mentioned, each new phase, you'll have new steps. You won't have as many steps. The first, most steps are probably the registration process in right now, but then moving forward, you'll have some new steps in your phase when you are actually abroad, and then when you return, some other steps also to make sure you know how to apply your credit when you return. So I think we're wrapping up with some next steps. So if you have yet to, please apply to your program, get accepted. As Darren mentioned, apply to scholarships. There's lots of them. And I want to echo what he said that these program providers have a lot to give. And so if you can apply, it can be free money in your pocket. Get accepted into your program. Start reviewing financial information from your program, any visa application process. Make sure you're staying and paying attention to news related to your location. So go ahead and subscribe maybe to a local news organization that's in English that you'll be able to take a look and just keep up to date with what's going on with your new second home coming up. Practice the language, download Duolingo. And really start picturing yourself in this new location and start doing the research so you know what the experience will be like and how you can adjust your life there and really to help manage your expectations of what this experience can look like. And I also want to note that Darren and I are here, so you can always schedule an appointment with us on Bates Reach if you want to continue talking about your program, you have questions about your visa. Again, we're not experts, but we can help, or any other questions that come up. And as we mentioned as well, we have our global ambassadors who will do some programming in the future and also reach out to those who are studying in locations that they also studied as well. So you might hear from someone soon. So we'd love to open up if there are any questions. We can also stick around afterwards, but I'm going to stop recording so we can answer some questions in one moment.
Before you go, if you wanted to put into the chat where you're